Okay, perfect. So I have no idea what we're getting ready to do. This is going to be determined based on what our client and guest wants. I do want to show you how I just did the neck strip though. This is important. Can you unbutton that or zip that down for me one time? Yep. We're going to do a little bit of do's and don'ts with the neck strip real quick before we go into the demonstration. Do you see I still have a full neck strip around his entire head? Let me get that camera one, please. So you see how I have a really full neck strip the whole ways around. What I find students do a lot is they go this, they pull it real tight, and then they twist it and tie a knot and they do this. What happens is, look how thin it is, and then this isn't completely tight. It doesn't have the ability. So when I put the cape on them, what do you think is going to happen next? It's going to touch the skin, and we shouldn't have the cape touching the skin. So this is actually incorrect, right? I'm going to show you real quick while we go to before we do the haircut service. You do need to stretch it, right? But I want to use what length I have first. Put your head up for me. And when I apply it to the neck, I want to keep it as wide and flat as possible with as least amount of folds and bends. I'm going to cross this one over, and I'm going to cross this one over top of that. Once I do that, all I'm doing is tucking it in the top. It's not moving. Now I have full neck strip on him. The reason why that's important, because once you place your cape on your guest, you want to come from the front and you place it on them. You want to make sure that it's hitting the neck strip. Once it's on the neck strip, the next thing you do is you don't just stop there and go ahead and cut. You want to fold this over top of the cape. What that does now is locks it in place. Chances are this neck strip's not going to go anywhere for the rest of the haircut. Okay, really simple trick. More important to do that for the sanitary purposes of making sure that our client is having the best experience, not just for the haircut, but health-wise. So Ando, what are we doing today?
Low skin fade.
So you do want a skin fade, and when you say low, what do you mean low?
Probably say like up to here.
Okay, what
where the ear begins, like right over here.
Okay.
I can start from right over there.
Okay.
And then just kind of like drop it down.
Okay. So you want it to, so you want like a drop skin fade down.
Yeah.
Okay. And you want it to start low.
Yeah.
All right.
And nothing on the top, and I'd say also like little fade on the beard too.
So you say nothing off the top. You mean you want it ball headed on the top, or?
No, nothing.
Oh,
to be
okay.
done on the top. Nothing to be done on the top.
So you don't want anything off the top.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. If while I'm going through the haircut, can I use professional judgment if I need to work on anything on the top?
Sure.
Okay. So why don't you want anything cut off the top?
Just growing it out.
Okay. So you want to maintain the length.
Yes.
Is there a particular look that you're going for?
Kind of like a pompadour.
Okay, so you want more lift in the front, and you want this to drop. So do you want it to go sideways, or you want it lift and then drop to the back?
Lift and drop to the back.
Okay, so then that means I can actually trim some of this in the back as long as I maintain the length in the front.
I guess, but I would say like not too much if you're gonna do it on the back.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're gonna do it, just lightly.
Gotcha. So the reason why I'm asking all these questions is because this is a real life scenario. What he thinks he wants and what I see in my mind is probably not what he sees in his head. So I have to go over all these questions. One, I've never cut his hair before. And that's extremely important, that if I've never cut his hair, that I need to understand what it is that he wants and what he's trying to achieve. So there's three things that I'm focused on: the shape of the haircut, the length of the haircut, and the overall direction that we're going to take this haircut. Those three things are what I'm focused on primarily. So if he said a pompadour, what does that shape look like in the end? Is that this? Is that this? Is this flatter on the sides? Those are things that we need to think about. Because in order to execute a haircut, you have to know what the end result is going to look like, and we have to focus on the overall shape of the cut. So he says, I don't want a lot off. I think it's more of, I'm afraid that if you cut too much off, it's not going to give me the look that I'm going for. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's probably because he's had bad experiences when people were cutting way too much off, or because he cuts hair, he probably cut somebody's hair off and it was a little too much off and was like, oh my God, that's not what he wants. So we're going to figure this out together. It's my first time cutting him, so I'm going to slowly, gradually get him there, right? But I also have to make sure that he feels confident in my ability to execute what it is that he wants. So the confidence comes from me, and that helps him to build confidence in me saying, okay, he knows what he's talking about. I'm going to cut some of this off the top, even though he said no. He don't know that, but I do. But we're going to slowly get there so that we can achieve his ultimate desired look. What I know as a professional and the years of experience that I have, I know how to achieve what he wants, even right now with the minimal length that he has. That's going to require me to trim a little bit more off the sides, but still maintain keeping it dark. Now, the advantage is he has really, really dark hair. He has a lot of density. And the other thing is he's very fair-skinned. So anything wrong with the haircut's really going to show up a lot. But this right here lifting up is not going to help my look, because this actually needs to be lower. If this is lower, this looks higher visually. Low in his mind is, I don't want it buzzed and cut all the way down. We're not going to do that. So let's get started with the haircut. What I want to do is I want to frame and rough out the shape of this cut before anything, right? It's the foundation of the haircut. So the foundation of a great style is a great haircut. If I don't execute the haircut and get the hair to do what I want it to do, pay attention to what his hair is doing as I'm moving this around. Can anyone tell me what's happening? When I push his hair forward, what is it doing? It's bouncing right back, which means I have no control over this hair right now. This hair is doing what it wants it to do. What should the hair be doing? What I want it to do. So we're going to get there by the time we're at the end of this cut. But for now, I can't. No matter what I do, it's going to bounce right back to where it is. So that's something that I'm looking at as I'm combing the hair and I'm doing my client analysis. I'm looking at the scalp. I'm looking at, so I can tell. These are things that I'm looking at as I'm combing it. I'm not just combing it. I'm analyzing the hair and the scalp. So I'm analyzing that the hair is very resistant and it's doing its own thing. You see that, right? I'm analyzing that. I'm also looking, he doesn't look like he has dry skin or dandruff. That's important for me to know, because he may have some conditions. The other things that I need to know is while I'm combing it, I'm feeling his scalp. Sometimes people have what is called a hypertrophy, a mole, or a raised skin tag, sometimes they're called. And as I'm combing them, what would happen if it's one there? I would catch it, I would feel it, I would get a snag. That's important for me to do that, to find out whether those are things that happen. Because he may not have thought about telling me, but guess what happens while I'm combing it? If he had one, he'd say, oh yeah, I gotta. And that helps me to determine what I'm going to do. So now that we've analyzed the hair, analyzed the scalp, I can go ahead and proceed with the haircut. He wants a low drop fade. Now this hair is really, really long and this hair is short. So he doesn't want this look, but he wants this to transition into this and he wants this fade to drop. So what I'm going to do is create the framework for this haircut. First thing I'm going to do is I want to remove a little bit of bulkiness. It's not a lot, but this weight that's here. So I'm going to go ahead and put my 4 on, and I'm going to go to the parietal ridge and just work my way out. And when I say work my way out, once I get to his occipital bone, I'm basically coming straight out. I'm not following the shape of the head and going into it. Right at the parietal ridge is where I'm going to transition out. How to identify the parietal ridge? When I place my comb at his ear, wherever the head is turning away from the comb is where the parietal ridge is. The occipital bone is where it's turning away from his head here. So this is the drop that he's naturally looking for. It's based on his parietal ridge and his occipital bone. So when I get to the parietal ridge, I'm working my way out, working my way out, working my way, and I'm maintaining this shape throughout the entire haircut. Does anything about what I just did look difficult? Not at all. So now that I've done that, let's take a look at how the sides. Does this look more even now? That doesn't look as intimidating as this side. So all I did was remove the weight so that I have a smoother canvas to work with. Okay? I'm gonna do the same thing as I work my way around. Right at the occipital bone, I'm coming out towards me. All I'm doing is following his shape and coming directly out, so that way I'm not cutting too much off. Right above the ear, right at the parietal ridge, occipital bone, working my way out, just removing weight. Now it looks pretty even the whole ways around. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and close it just to get a little bit closer. Just want to see what his hair is doing. I'm doing the same thing, not cutting too much off, right at the parietal ridge, coming straight out. If I was exaggerating the move, it would just keep going to infinity. This is what it looks like exaggerated. So this is just his hair separating. So when I was saying I was combing the hair, great question. So the question is, what is this little swirl happening here? So he's got bed head, he's got hat head. This hair is doing whatever it wants to do. Based on what? The way it grows out, the hair stream. There's something else too. There's another factor. There are certain bonds in the hair that are affected by heat and water. The hydrogen bonds. So he was sweating, he was hot, he took a shower, threw a hat on, walked out the house, whatever the case may be, bedhead, his hydrogen bonds are broken, and this is the direction that they are. If I wet his hair, then I can manipulate it and make it go where I need it to go, and it may break that up. We won't know until I do that. But for now, this is going to stay here because the hydrogen bonds in his hair are saying this is how his hair is laying. Also, it's right where his whirl is. So look down for me real quick. Let's get a top view. If we can get a top view real quick. So if you look right here, his natural whirl, this is not a cowlick, this is a whirl. The whirl is in the back, it creates the hair stream. A cowlick is anything contrary to the hair stream and the hair pattern. For example, let's get a camera one. His hair's all coming back, but right here, the hair's going forward. This is a cowlick. This is a whirl. This is a cowlick. So his hair stream and pattern is based off of his whirl. Anything contrary to the hair stream and pattern is a cowlick. Now, is this an actual cowlick or is this just the way he combs his hair? That's to be determined based on what bonds? The hydrogen bonds. He may just comb his hair that way and it's just sticking up. It may lay down forward. So we'll take a look and see what's happening. But for now, great question. This separation is just the way his hair is growing. It could be part of the whirl. It could also be this is just some bedhead. We don't know yet. The best way to do that would be to give him a shampoo and shampoo his hair and blow dry. We're all going to wet it when we do the haircut. But great question. So I'm going to go back over this because I don't know where I was. It's like anything. If you're doing a mannequin and you lost your haircut, where do you go back to? You go back to where the origin of where you started. So I'm going back to where I started, and I want to make sure that I didn't miss a step. This happens all the time. You're servicing a client. He asks you a question in the middle of that conversation. You may have put the clipper down, and then you forgot where you were going in the haircut. You're like, uh-oh, let me go back to the point of origin, find out where I'm at, and then get back to the direction I'm trying to go with the haircut. I know where I'm at now. We cleaned all this up. Next thing I want to do is I want to create a guideline. I personally don't really cut with guidelines because with guidelines, I don't want to put something in and have to remove it. Okay? So I'm going to do a two-part demonstration. I'm going to put this side with the guideline first because I definitely think if you're a beginning barber and you're unsure of what direction to go, you want to create guidelines so that way you can maintain symmetry and consistency throughout the haircut. So I'm going slightly below his occipital bone and I'm just creating a guideline. Notice I didn't go in and create the guideline this way. Many of you probably have seen that on social media. You're probably looking at haircut porn, which is YouTube. And while you're on there, you're seeing people do that. What I would tell you is that a lot of the people who are doing that, they're actually showing off for social media because it is much harder to remove the line when you put it in like this than if you go in and softly remove the line. Let me explain to you why. I'm going to use this camera so that you guys can see it. When you're cutting against the hair and you're going straight up, do you see there's no bend in the skin? When I go in and I push on it, what happens to my skin? It dents it in. When you're using your outliners, the job of this tool is to outline. It's a finishing tool. When you push on it, it's going to be really, really sharp. This is going to be the closest point of the entire haircut because you're pushing into the skin and you're getting it right below that epidermis there. And you're making it really, really hard. And I guarantee you that if you watch on social media, when people are pushing on, the fade may start here, but it ends up higher because they have to remove that hard line that they put in. So it is not my recommendation that you go in and create a really, really hard line to remove. It's called a hard line for a reason. Harder to remove. So the next thing I'm going to do, I have my clipper closed for my first guideline. The whole ways around, right? That is the shape that I'm looking at. Looks a little crooked right there, doesn't it? Right? I'm okay with that. Doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to go ahead with my one closed, and I'm going to create another guideline. But before I do that, I want to show you this part. Notice that his hair is lighter here. Do you guys see that? Okay. Let me move this real quick so you guys can see just a little bit more. All right, cool. His hair is lighter here and it's darker in here. The reason for that is what? It's one word. It starts with a D. Density. His hair is more dense here. I guarantee you majority of people's hair is going to be more dense in the back because the head's rounding and all the hair is being pushed that way, so it looks fuller. But it also could be more dense because naturally the hair is not growing enough over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to avoid this area. I'm going to focus on right where it begins to get dark and create another guideline. Now my first guideline is where I thought that it should be. Give myself a little bit of room for error. My second guideline I'm going to do is going to be about a finger length in separation from the bottom line. And when I say finger, let me explain to you what I mean. Show you something else too while I'm here. So I'm going to take my finger and this is going to determine the width of my second guideline. As I go past this point, right at the parietal ridge, and I start to turn down, it's going to get a little bit wider. The reason why is the hair is more dense in the back, and I want it to look and appear that it's even, not that it is even. All the sectioning that you guys have been doing in your mannequins, 9 block, 6 block, I want you to visualize this, and let's get a top view real quick. If we can get a top view. The illustration that I want to give you guys so that you understand, we get a top view with 3. So the illustration I want you to think of is an umbrella. So the apex is the highest point of the head. It's also going to be the top of our umbrella. You can section from here to the point of recession. That's where his hairline is receding. One section. From here, from the apex, you can come back, and then this will be the back. On the sides, you have another area, 2 other areas that are divided for your umbrella. Do you guys see the visual umbrella? While I'm cutting within this quadrant. So let's get a side view. I'm cutting within this quadrant. Then I'll cut within this quadrant. Then I'll cut within the quadrant in the back, and I'll work my way around my umbrella. You following me? So sectioning is important for everything, whether you're physically putting it in there or you visually see the section that you're working on. Are you following me? So we're going to use this umbrella as an example. So in the back portion of my sectioning, it's going to be slightly wider than it is, or thicker than it is up front, because I know that it's going to be tighter. The other thing, do you notice that his hair? What do you notice with his hair as I'm cutting it? What's happening and what's not happening? What do you see? Shadow, you got some shadow. Part of the shadow is that the hair I'm cutting is also sticking to his head. So, does it look better now? Okay. So, the proper tools are important for the different types of services. He has a lot of hair. Not only does he have a lot of hair, he's got really dark hair and he has very fair skin. So now I can go back in, clean this little part up that was a little bit crooked, and now it looks a whole lot better than it did earlier. Do you guys see it? Okay. So we focused on the parietal ridge and where that hair was going to separate, right? So from the parietal ridge up, it's going to transition into the top. What I want to do is I want to remove a little bit more weight and transition and work my way down. Do you guys see my two guidelines? I have one at the bottom, which is my clipper closed. The second one I have is a one guard. Oh, no, it's still closed. I don't have it open. So what did I use to remove the bulk? I used the 4. So because I used the 4, was my 4 open or was my 4 closed? It was closed. It was closed. I'm going to go to a 3. And with this 3, because it's lower than a 4, I'm going to try to transition my weight from my 1 to my 4. I'm going to leave it at a 90 degree. The hair cutting is not happening here. It's not happening here. It's happening here. Okay? So if I go like this, am I going to cut any hair? No. But did I just make this number 3 longer? Yes. If I flatten it, is it closer? Okay. This is how I switch guards without switching guards. You're going to see what I do in a minute. So I'm going to hold this like this at a 90 degree, and I want to see if it's cutting the hair. If it's not going to cut the hair, what I'm going to do is then drop and tilt the angle. So I'm correct. Question was, am I blending the 1 to the 4? Yes, but I'm starting from the top and working my way down, so I'm blending the 4 to the 1, okay? And because I put a 3 on, I don't want to cut too much off. So in order to prevent from cutting too much off, I'm going to tilt my tool, and if it's not cutting any, I'll drop my angle. If it's not cutting much, I'll drop my angle some more. It's all the way flat. And now you can hear it cutting a little bit. Do you guys hear the little crunch? Okay. When you're removing bulk and weight, bigger movements. When you begin to blend, medium movements. When you're really tight along that bottom line, very, very small, minute movements. We're going to go over those, so keep them in mind. Right now, I'm doing medium movements. Remember earlier I was exaggerating? So now I'm doing medium movements. Close it. Doing the same thing. Not much is coming off now, which means I have to do what? I need to go down to a 2. I'm going to take my 3 off. I'm going to go to my 2. I always start open. Great question. She said, do I use the 2 open? I always go open. Why am I going open? Because I can always cut off more. So I'm going to start with my 2. It's open. And look what angle I'm using. I'm not cutting anything, even all the way up in my 4 with a 2. Nothing's happening. What am I going to do? Nope. I'm going to change my angle. Nothing's happening. Then I'm going to do what? I'm going to flatten it. So it's 1, 2, 3. Longer, medium, short. 1, 2, 3. Okay? Trying to simplify it for you. I'm doing the 1 movement. Not happening. Doing the 2 movement. Not much happening. Doing the 3 movement. A little bit. It's not cutting as much as I want off. So what am I going to do next? I'm going to close it. And what movements am I going to do? 1, 2, 3. Same thing, close. 1, 2. So dropping the angle. 3, flatten it out. All right. Notice as I'm going down, I'm not cutting into the hair that was already cut because that's the shape of the cut that we want to maintain. Remember, we're maintaining the shape, the length, and the direction of the cut. So if I cut into this, I change the shape. I don't want to cut into this. This is the shape we're going with. So as I'm going lower, as I'm going lower in my sizes, I'm also going closer and closer to this second line. It's going to disappear in a second. So we had a 2, open and close, 1, 2, 3, close, 1, 2, 3. Now what am I going to do? Put my 1.5. I could put a 1. New technology, they got 1.5s now. When I was starting to cut hair, they didn't have 1.5s. So they got 1.5s now. I'm going to start with this 1.5 first, and what am I going to do? Open, tilted at a 1. I got a little bit of crunch. It's removing a little bit of hair. Angle number 2. Now, according to what you guys are visually watching me do, is what I'm doing, does it look difficult? Really simple. 1, 2, 3. Open, close, shut. I'm not doing anything that's extraordinary. I'm keeping it very, very simple. Next move is what? I'm going to close it. 1 is at 90. 2, I'm still at 1. 2 is at what? Closer to a 45, very good. And 3. Now, do you see that second line in there as hard? Is it as hard as it was? It's softer. You can see the weight, but you can't see the distinct line, right? So now I'm going to go to my 1, and I'm going to do the same thing. My 1, open at a 90. Remove a little bit of this weight. There's a dark spot right there. So I'm just using my corner for that one tiny little dark spot. And I'm still doing the same thing. Just a corner at a 90. Just a corner at about a 45. That's my 2 position. Just a corner at my 1 position. Does that look better now? Okay. Tilt your head down for me. 1 position. 2 position. 3 position. That's all open. Now I'm going to close it. Same thing. My 1 position at a 90. Work my way around. My 2 position at about 45. And my 1 position. As flat as possible. Notice I'm not going up into the haircut. I'm focused on the area between my bottom line and around where my second line was. So you really can't see that second line. There is some weight in there, but you can't really see the second line. Would you all agree? Okay. Now I'm going to go to my 1 open, no guard open. It's open because the lever is down. You can see the moving blade is here. Once I close it, the moving blade gets closer. So we're leaving it open. Lever down, leaving it open. I'm focusing on the area right above this bottom line, but not as high as where my second line was. Okay? So I'm holding at a 90 so that way I don't cut too much off. Work my way around. Not much is getting cut off. Now I'm going to do my second position, which is closer to a 45. I hear the hair cutting. Do you hear it, Ando, cutting? And now I'm going to flatten it all the way out. You hear more being cut, right?
Yeah.
Now down here, because there's more density, I got to go slightly higher. Did that line soften up a little bit? Just a little bit. So I'm going to go 1 notch on this clipper. Now I'm focusing on my umbrella section. I'm only going to work in this area because the shape of the cut is there. I need to remove this line. So look how hard this line is and look how soft this is right now. You see that? So I'm going to open this all the way just to start over. Flatten it. Nothing's happening. 1 notch down at a 90. Slowly work my way down. Nothing's happening. Next notch at a 90. 45. Flatten it. 1 more notch at a 90. 45. Flatten it. Did the line disappear? We're only focused on this area. There's a line here, but you don't see it here. Does this look faded? So we're going to move past this around the ear. What do you notice around the ear right in this area? Well, you have a line. It is a little bit dark, but what's right above that line? It's a tiny little light spot. That's density. It ain't me. I didn't make the mistake. That's his head. So I want to avoid cutting over that light spot, because if I cut over the light spot, what's going to happen? It's going to get lighter, and it's going to change my fade. So for now, let's skip over this, and let's focus from here to here. Can we do that? Yeah? Yes? No? Maybe so? Okay, okay. I mean, I'll do what you want me to do, but I want to make sure we're all on the same page. So this is going to be an easy fix. So does this look more even? Yes? I don't have light spots all on the side of his head over here? Okay, so let's focus on this. No guard, open, flatten it out, nothing's happening. 1 notch. Right above that line. Work my way down, put it at flat, position 3. It's getting a little bit lighter. Notice my movements are really small. 1 more notch at a 90. Flatten it out. I'm dropping that angle. Is it getting lighter? Okay, 1 more notch. Is the line slowly beginning to disappear? I'm just using the corner in this tiny little dark spot right here. Flatten it out. How's that look? I'm going to close it all the way. Hold it at a 90, and right at that line, as soon as I see where that line was, I'm just going to pull it away. I'm tapping and going. If I keep going up high, what's going to happen? I'm going to create a new line. I'm going to take the fade up. I'm going to go back open, just to clean it up a little bit more. Back open. And all I'm doing is fine-tuning it now. All the way open, because he has a dark spot right here, and I don't want to cut too much off, but I want to make sure that it looks even. One more notch. I'm getting closer and closer. And what I'm looking for is that what I have happening here matches here as I keep going through the haircut. So we got a fade happening. Right here we got some line and weight. Do you see it? So let's remove this part. We're going to do the same thing. I'm not changing anything. What I am going to do is avoid the light area though. I'm using just the corner, because I don't need to affect this fade, to hit that one tiny little dark spot. 90 at a 45, flatten it out a little bit more. Same thing, going back, hit that little tiny little dark spot. I'm using my corner right below that light spot. Flatten it out a little bit. One notch down. I'm only using my corners because I'm working in this area. I don't need to cut anything over here, and I don't need to cut anything over here. I just need to work in this area. So my clipper's too big for this area. You see that? So I need to only use about 4 or 5 teeth from each side to work in that area. You follow me? Does anyone have any questions so far? No? Go ahead. Let me. So your question is, am I going to go back and get to this weighted area? Absolutely. We haven't even touched the top. So, but remember, what does our client want? He wants a drop fade. What doesn't he want? He doesn't want length to come off. So in order for me to do that, I got to slowly, gradually remove that. If I go, I know that I can do it, but what's going to happen between my relationship and him? Trust. He didn't do what I asked him to do. He cut way too much off. He can't see what I see, right? So I got to slowly, he's looking at himself right now, and he's like, yeah, that's kind of what I wanted with my fade. This is looking good to me. Am I about right? Okay. So look, he's smiling when he said it. He's like, yeah, this is exactly what I wanted. We haven't even touched the top. If I go ahead and start whacking all this off, he's going to be like, he done cut too much off. It's not going to have my end result. I got to build trust with him. Once he trusts me, guess what happens the second and third time I cut his hair? It's going to be much quicker, and I can go right in to do what I do because now he trusts that I know what I'm doing. I'm trying to build trust with him, and at the same time, I'm giving you guys a lesson. So I'm going back into this area that I said is about a thumb in width, and I'm just using my corners to do that. The other thing is I see a lot of students when they first start cutting hair, they're afraid to pull on the ear. I don't know if y'all been paying attention, but this is my ear. I'm doing what I want with the ears. Not his, doesn't belong to him, it belongs to me. Because if I need to cut right here, I got to get it out the way. I told a student to pull the ear down the other day and they folded it. Is that ear down and out the way? It's not, because it's in my way. I need to pull this ear out the way so I can get in this area right here. Don't be afraid to yank on somebody's ear. Now, this is my student, so I'm going to do this. I'm not talking about this. What I'm talking about is pushing that ear out the way so you can put your clipper in the position you need. Because what does he want? The fade. He doesn't want me to be afraid to move his ear and then I can't execute what he wants. He doesn't want to get cut. You know, he doesn't want to be bleeding. He doesn't want me to nick his ear by accident because I'm afraid to move the ear out the way. Position it so that you can execute what needs to be done. Trust me, he's not even paying attention to the ear until I start talking about it. Does that sound about right? You weren't even thinking about me pulling on your ear at all until I said it.
Yeah, feels natural.
Right, because you're used to getting a haircut. But the moment I say it, you're like, Dad, he is kind of pulling on my ear. But you weren't thinking about that prior to. Your client's not thinking, Dad, he's pulling on my ear. They're not thinking that. They're thinking that I'm doing what I got to do to get the job done. So now that as I'm working around, again, even though I'm using just a corner, at a 90, at a 45, and then I flatten it out. One notch down, work my way around. One notch down, work my way around. Right here. As I'm transitioning, I have to blend it out. Has anyone ever had a car accident? Okay. Has anyone ever had their car painted due to that car accident? So, repainted the door, the side, or the quarter panel, whatever. So, I'm going to use that as an example. We finished this side and we finished this. I had to then focus on this area that wasn't completed. Once I get this area, then I have to go into it to bring them together. When your door gets painted because somebody banged your door, and the quarter panel's fine and the back door is fine, they still have to blend that paint into the back door and the quarter panel so that way it looks like it's the same. Because your car that you've been driving for 3-4 years has had sun and snow and weather damage, right? Clear coat, car washes, all that stuff. The new paint is fresh. They got to make it blend into the new so that way it looks the same. So although I was only working in this area, I still have to slowly get my way into what was already completed so that way I have a good blend happening from both sides. And then it doesn't look like as if I stopped in the middle of the haircut to fix that area. It looks as if I worked my way through the entire cut. Do you guys see it? Okay. So what I want to do now is I want to go ahead and line him up. Now I'm going to keep this as natural as possible. If I was going to keep this as natural as possible, we can change it depending on what he wants, but it's my first time cutting him. I'm going to, notice my finger here is going to hit him right on the cheekbone. What this helps for me to do is to stabilize my outliner. If I'm going in like this, it's not stable. The other thing is I can't feel him if he moves. If he's got a sneeze, if he got the hiccups, or if he has a thought and he moves his body, because people talk with their bodies. They're excited, their eyebrows open up. When they're sad, they put their eyebrows down, right? That's body conversation. Somebody sneezes, what do their body do? Right? Before they go forward, they go back because they're breathing in. If I'm connected to them, I can feel that movement. That energy happens between the two of us. Okay? But it also helps me to stabilize it. I'm always, whenever I'm lining up, somewhere stabilizing my liner. So I'm going to keep this as low as possible, and then I'm going to keep this as wide as possible. So I'm just kind of marking where we are. Do you guys see that? I'm not cutting into his hairline. I'm leaving this as low as possible and this as wide as possible. With that being said, if you look, it kind of moves a little bit. You got hair sticking up. I got to bring these two together. So what I'm going to do, again, I'm stabilizing my finger there. All I'm doing is perm rodding. Okay? Watch. Holding the clipper, and I'm rolling it in my fingers. This is perm rodding. It's just a bigger tool. So when I place this here, I'm rolling it in my fingers. Rolling it backwards, rolling it forwards. Do you see that? Am I doing anything special? Nothing. I'm just rolling it. The better you get, the more you can become a little smoother with it. Now I'm just tapping it so it doesn't look like an exaggerated roll. I'm just using that corner. I'm only using about 3 or 4 of the teeth that are right here. I'm not using the entire liner because this is round and this is flat. If I use the entire liner, I'm going to have jagged edges. We don't want jagged edges. We want a nice smooth turn. So I'm going to stabilize my finger here. I'm going to do some perm rodding. Stabilize it here. Some perm rodding. Work my way down. Stabilize it here. Clean it up just a little bit more until I get the desired look. This is about as natural as it's going to look unless he wants me to cut into it. So how does that look for you, Ando?
It looks good.
It's good? Okay. Now, I think he keeps this natural, so I'm not going to line this unless he requests it at the end. Okay? The other thing I'm going to do is right here at the bottom, I never skinned his hair. We never cleaned it up with the outliners. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go in, and right below that, take my liners and clean this up a little bit. I'm not going up into the fade because what's going to happen if I go into the fade? I'm going to create another line. Did I create another line while I was doing that? Not at all. There are a few dark spots. So I'm just going to use my corner to clean those up. Now the thing about a low skin fade or a low drop fade like this is that it doesn't last as long. So for you cutting somebody, it takes you longer to cut it because you're fading in a tighter spot. It's a shorter transition. But he's going to have to come back much quicker. So you'll have a repeat customer who comes back on a regular basis where you can continue to make money, right? If it's somebody who gets a higher, tighter fade, they may last another week before they come back in for their cut. So you got to figure out what type of clientele base you want. Me, generally my haircuts take about 15 to 20 minutes on a regular basis, no more than a half hour. But for educational purposes, while I'm talking and teaching, it may take me a little bit longer. Notice I switched my tool because I saw something that as I turned his head stood out to me. Now I'm gonna use my liner right below that and remove this hair under here. If I need this to get tighter, look down for me. As he looks down and I'm pulling on his skin, what am I doing? I'm stretching the skin because what I want is that hair to become erect. I want it to stick out. If his hair sticks out, it makes it easier for me to cut it off, which is then going to make it a lot closer. And then I won't have any issues with creating any lines, and it'd be more bald. It'll feel bald when he rubs on that. I'm going to take my clipper just to soften it up, make sure I didn't leave any little weight or any lines. And that's pretty much his fade on the side. I'll go in and we'll get to the weight in a minute. But did you guys see how I did that? Okay. I'm going to do something on the other side. It's more of like a hybrid method. And I'll explain to you what I mean in a second. Let me see where I want to stand. I think I'll stand over there. So here's what we're going to do. I will create a guide at the bottom, okay? Normally I don't. Would you want to see it without a guide at the bottom? Leave a guide at the bottom for now? Okay. As we advance and as you guys advance, we won't do guides at all. I'm sorry? No guide at the bottom at all.
What side did you do this one?
This side I did 2 guides.
We just do no guide. No guide.
No guide at all? Okay. So I'm going to start with my 4. Because I'm going back to the point of origin, starting all over again. Even though I know I cut this, I just want to make sure it's cut, right? Go back to my 4. It's closed. Now I'm going to go to my 3. See that 90? Flatten it at about 45. It's closed. Flatten it. So I'm going to leave it at this angle so you guys can see how I exaggerate this 90 and then I drop it. I'll then turn the camera because you guys can see what I'm doing from here. But I want you to see also the angle that I'm using here. I want from my 3 to my 2. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Go to my 2. It's closed. First one was a 4. You missed the first part. I went from a 4 to a what? No, earlier. I went from a 4 to a 2 transitioning it. You missed the part earlier. I did it by tilting it. So if I put this 2 on there, is it reaching my 4? Why? Because the hair is being cut here. That's why. So my 2, it's not cutting enough. That's at a 90. Now I'm dropping it to a 45. You hear it being cut? Now I'm flattening it out. A little bit closer. That's all with the same guard. Where am I going to go from my 2 to my what? Nope. 1.5. New technology, might as well take advantage of it. So, pay attention to how this is going to change right in here. I'll stand here. I'm holding it at a 90. 45. And now it's flat. 90. $45. flat. Where am I going to next? Well, to my 1. 90. .45. Flat. Tilt your head down for me. Thank you. It's making a smoother transition. We have no lines over here. I got it all the way closed. 90. 45. Flat. Do you see the transition happening? No guard. 90. 45. Flat. Now, do you see the fade coming in? Okay, this side is still lower. I'm giving myself room to go up. I'm going to make this tight in a second, but do you see how the fade is happening? Okay, look down for me. I want to stand here. Can you guys see if I stand here? Okay, I'm holding it at a 90. I'm just going slightly higher. Making sure that it's even, working my way around. I'm still holding it at a 90. Now I'm dropping it to a 45. It's my 2 position. Now I'm flattening it out. That's my 1 position. Or 3 rather, I'm sorry. My 3 position. Do you see the fade happening? Okay? I'm going to close it. Here's where I am going to put a line just so you can see it. But it ain't going to be as hard as it was originally. Do you see it? Okay? It's going to be erased in less than 10 seconds. Because I'm going to open it 2 notches. And all I'm going to do is my 90. And then I'm going to flatten it out. One more notch. And now our line is gone. Okay? What's that? I just want 1 more notch closed. Because it depends on the density. Did you see how that was erased? This is fading down. Now, this is the method I go to. I'm going to finish the cut, but I want you to see it real quick in the back. This is the cut, this is the method that I go to because I already see where my transition points are going to be before I'm cutting the hair. Because I'm focused on 3 things. What are the 3 things I said originally I'm looking at? Shape, length, and starts with D. Direction. Shape, length, and direction. When you go to put a line in, are you guessing where that line is? I mean, realistically, right? You are. You're guessing. I think this is where I want this line to start. You're guessing, right? Where's the transition point of the head? No, well, yes. And where else? He said the occipital and the what? The parietal ridge. So the parietal goes the whole ways up, but the ridge is here. The parietal goes from here to about here. But this is the parietal ridge. My point of transition is happening at the parietal ridge. So if I know that, and I can determine where the ridge is, why do I have to put a line in there? Now, if you can't see that, if you have a difficult time doing that, then you go ahead and you put your guides in. There's nothing wrong with that. The better you get, the easier it will be to execute that. Guys that have been cutting for 10 and 15 years that put guide after guide after guide and kind of blend them out, they got consistency in their haircuts, but you know what else they are? They're consistently taking long. Promise you. They're putting a guide, then they're slowly blending it out. They take much longer removing a line because they're putting the steps in. When you already see where that line is going to be in your mind and you can visualize it, then you don't have to put it in. You just you blend it out. So let's keep going with the haircut. I'm going to go back to a 2. Let me put this in position so you guys can see. Let's do it from here. You guys good? Okay. So there's my 2. Going into that weight, leaving that weight right there where we were talking about earlier. I'm leaving the weight on purpose because guess what? He doesn't trust me, and we want to make sure that he's confident before I'm done. I'm going down to my 1.5. All right, something just happened, and I'm going to show you what just happened. While I was cutting him, this guard almost popped off. You heard it? Look, it came right off. It's on, but it popped right off. So what I tend to do is with this, I can bend this right here. So that way it sits a little bit tighter. You see that? It was flatter. It's also these metal things, these rivets, they could break. This is plastic. So with a lot of use, once you're pushing this down, that also puts pressure and it messes up that little bend. One of the things I do while I'm cutting is I keep my finger on it. Because just now while I was hitting his head, now let me ask you this. How's my pressure? Am I beating your head up?
No.
Okay. I'll explain what I mean by that in a second. But when I go in and I tap this wants to push that off. You see that? Came right off. As I go to push on his head, this could pop off. So I keep my finger on here so that way, if that happens, I can catch it and I don't have to lose it. So guess what I just did with my 2? What happened with my 2? I dropped it. Am I allowed to use it? No. So good, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to leave it there for the remainder of this haircut. For the rest of this haircut, it's going to sit right where it's at. So I'm going to go to my 1, and what am I going to do? I'm going to tilt it. Exactly. So now that here we are, at a 90, my 90, this makes it a 1.5. When I take it to the 45, it's still slightly longer than the actual guard itself. Now I'm flattening it. Close it all the way at a 90. When I close it and I tilt it, it creates more length. Every time I'm tilting this at a 90, I'm creating more length. But notice as I'm cutting, I'm not creating new lines either. There's not a new line getting established in this haircut. All I'm doing is blending it. There's some weight there, but that weight is there on purpose. Flatten this out. Do you see the fade happening? He's got a little bit of a line. It's more weight, but I'm going to take my corner at a 90, at a 45, and there it's going. Okay? So now I'm going to go ahead and take the guard off. No guard, open. I'm going to put it right at my 90. As I'm working my way up this haircut and down, flatten it out from a 90 to a 45. 1 notch down, 90, position 1. 1 notch down, 90, position 1. 45, position 2. Flat, position 3. Open it all the way up because I'm moving around the cut. 90. .45, position 2. One notch down. 45, I didn't go to the 90. As I go higher, I'll tilt it to the 90 because I don't want to create any more weight. As I go lower, I position it from 45 to 0 or flat. How's that fade coming together? Okay? When I was asking him about my pressure, what I'm not doing is putting the clipper on his head and my hand and my wrist and my elbow. When I'm touching the top of his head, I'm not putting my hand and my wrist and my elbow. Because if I'm pushing pressure on his head, I promise you right now, he feels it right here in his shoulders. You don't want to be this is uncomfortable, isn't it?
A little bit.
Okay? I'm doing it on purpose for educational purposes. You don't have to, all you have to do is place your fingertips on the head. Little to no pressure. My fingertips on his head means what? Hold still. Don't move. I don't need to grip him and say, don't move. My fingertips, just the fingertips, the weight of my fingertips, not my fingers, my fingertips. Same rule apply with the clipper, just my tips.
Did you say the cushions?
The cushions, yeah, just the cushions. Not everybody got decent cushions. Some people got them real flat, but yeah, just the fingertips, cushions. Same with the clipper. I'm not putting the entire clipper weight. When I put the clipper on his head, this is too much weight because I'm allowing the whole entire clipper to fit on his head. The amount of pressure that I put on his head is the weight of the blade. I'm still stabilizing this clipper in my hand. So right now, when you feel this, it's not as heavy as this, right?
No.
Right. Same thing I'm doing when I'm here. Now, as I'm moving faster, there may be a little bit more applied pressure, but imagine if I had aggressive pressure and I'm moving fast. There's going to be more pressure, it's going to be more irritating, it's not going to feel good. So let's get back to what we were doing. All the way open. At a 90. Let's do that. All the way open at a 90. I'm going to skip from around his ear again so you guys can see. Then I'm going to flatten it out. 45. Then I'm going to drop this angle. Keep it real, real flat. He's got a dark spot right there in the middle. You see it? I'm just going to use my corner at a 90, at a 45, and then it's gone. Okay? Do you see that this has a nice symmetrical shape going down? Even though it's not all the way going, but you can see the transition and the fade. Now I'm going to go one notch down, right below where I was cutting, at a 90, work my way down, flatten it out. Close it again at a 90, work my way down, flatten it out, close it again at a 90, work my way down. And this is where he really, because I just explained it, this is really where he can feel the weight of just the blade. You don't feel my hand or the clipper, just the blade.
Yeah.
Exactly. What that does is, I'm gonna open it back up. What that does is, because I'm not putting pressure, it's not irritating his scalp, it's not irritating his skin, it's not gonna be red, he's not gonna be irritated, his head's not hot. Do you see the fade coming in? Go back down to where I was, using my corner, one tiny little dark spot, close it all the way. At a 90, 45, drop it all the way down. Tiny little line, you see it? You probably can't see it as much there, but right here. Open it all the way up. Now, I'm using my finger here. Does anyone tell me why I'm doing this? I'm stretching the skin because I'm stretching the skin for two reasons. He has very thick hair, which means his pores are what? They're open. They're wider than average. Because he has a thicker diameter of hair, the hole that the hair is coming out is just about as thick, right? For the hair to come out. If he had a tighter diameter, tighter the hole. The problem is that while I'm cutting, the teeth could get caught in the skin of the pores. Has that ever happened to anyone? While you were cutting? It has happened? Usually in the summertime that's going to happen because people are sweating, their pores are open, and you can catch them. Depending on the type of blade that you're using could also catch it. If you're using like a surgical blade, the teeth are finer. If they're finer, they're going to get in the holes much quicker. So I'm pulling his skin tight so that way I'm not catching any of his pores by accident. The thing I'm not doing is this. I see a lot of this.
So don't do that when you cut?
I'm not doing it. Did you see me do it?
I'm just asking.
I'm not saying don't do it. You have to understand why or why not. So his fade, this is the shape. I want him to walk around natural, so I want to fade it in his natural position. Are there times where I may have to do this? I'm not going to do it here. I'll do it up here. See that? I'm still getting the job done, but if I'm doing it here, what's being affected in the hair? I said it earlier. She called it out. Hydrogen bonds. His body is warm. My body is warm. Sweat, water, heat is going to create this hair to move. And if I'm pinching this, is this how he's naturally is walking around? No. So now his hair, now he has a dimple in his hair. Now he's got a dimple, and I got to work around the dimple. I don't want to work around the dimple. I want his hair to be as natural as possible. So I'm pulling the skin from down here. Flatten it out. Close it a little bit. I'm just focusing on dark spots now. Close it a little bit more. Open it because I'm going a little bit higher. Close it all the way at a 90. Open it a little bit. Now he's faded there in his temporal area. It'll look better once I line it. Again, I'm using my knuckle to stabilize it on his cheekbone. Using my knuckle, and I'm going to keep this as low as possible. Using my fingertip or the nail on the cheekbone, stabilize it as wide as possible. Using my knuckle from here, and all I'm doing is perm rodding. Right now, this is a perm rod move. I'm rolling the liner in my hand. Now, I'm not exaggerating it that hard or that fast, but this is exactly what I'm doing. It's position A here. As I work my way around, I'm tapping. Notice how it eventually flattens out. My fingers stayed here. I started down here. Look what's happening. Perm rodding. So do you think perm rodding is a little important? Remember Mr. Miyagi? Up, down, wax on, wax off. Same thing. Does it what?
So does it matter like the shape of the trimmer that you're using, like how?
You mean like a T-blade or a?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I guess a T-blade and just not that, but the body of the trimmer itself, like you know how that goes.
It's all ergonomic. So his question is, does it matter the shape of the outliner? It's not the tool, it's the technique. So each person is going to have their own personal preference. These were given to me, so I'm using them. I'll use whatever clipper is given to me. Whatever clipper you give me, I'll use it. It doesn't matter. These were given to me. This is what we have on display, so I'm using them. I got my stuff at the shop. It's different. It's stuff in school I use in school. I use all the same stuff. It's not the tool. It's the technique. My technique, regardless of the outliner I'm using, this is not going to change.
Because sometimes when I try to do that, because I try to do like what you know, so I like rest my finger on it. Once I try to like roll it, don't roll it.
Well, it takes repetition. You're getting 1,250 hours in school, but in order to master anything, you need 10,000 hours. You got to put the time in. And so it may be awkward, and my position is different on this side than it is on the other side. Okay? So on this side, I'm resting more of my knuckle on the cheekbone and getting the turn movement. Earlier, when I was doing this side, I was using more of a pointing it. Because I'm in a different spot, I'm still using the right hand. If I was using my left hand, then I would place that knuckle again. Okay? If I go on the other side, I'm using my left hand, I would have to point again to position this clipper wherever I need it. Okay? So it may not have worked for you, you just might have been on the wrong side. The other thing is sometimes you're too close, right? And you're trying to look, you might be in the wrong position. The best way that I can assist you with this is actually watching you do it. There's a lot of tips, especially like cutting around the ears. People are like, I'm struggling on this side, but I'm good on that side. Sometimes it's tilting the head down in order to position it, right? Sometimes it's putting the head back in order to position it. Each side is different. If you're right-handed, it's not going to be the same as you cutting on the opposite side. You have to position it to make it comfortable for you. His head is on a swivel. It's called a neck. Position his head where you need it so that you can work where you need to work. But you should always be thinking about your body mechanics, your ergonomics, and how you should be standing. If you have paid attention to me, my elbows stay here. The only thing I'm using is my hands because I have more movement here than I do here. I'm going to keep this still, relax, and just use this. And it's not wrist action, it's finger action. I'm using my phalanges, not my wrist. If I'm using my wrist, I'm going to create tension here, get carpal tunnel. But if I use my fingers, when I'm fading, look at my wrist. It's not breaking. This stays stable. This moves more. Okay? So let's get to the rest of this fade because I got to tie in the back to the side right here. So we got the temples pretty much done in here. Only thing we didn't do was bald them out. Charlene says she likes this method a lot better. I will tell you that I prefer this method a lot better. And if you've ever, and I would encourage any of you guys, if you ever want to come and watch me work at the shop where I'm back-to-back cutting, and some of your former graduates are back-to-back cutting, you guys are welcome. I just need to know ahead of time when you're coming so that we have space to accommodate you. You will see that my haircuts are a lot quicker and I don't put guidelines in my haircut. All of my cuts start from the top and work my way down. All of them. Doesn't matter whether it's a blowout, if it's a high skin fade, a low drop fade, straight hair, curly hair, wavy hair. It doesn't matter. My haircuts, if you got 360 waves and you want a temp fade, I'm going to fade it from the top down. I'm not fading from the bottom up. Every cut I do is from the top down because ultimately he wanted what look? He wanted a pomp. So I need to be focused on transitioning this hair to the top look. So I cut from the top down. If I focus on fading this and I cut too high and I go past this parietal ridge and I'm up into the parietal, then I have all this weight. I have nothing to transition the haircut into. That's where you have a lot of crown killers. That's where people are taking the fade up so high that all of this, he kind of has it. It's a little flat right in here. He has length, but you see how that flattens out and this lifts up? That could have been from a bad cut prior to. I won't know until I look at it. We're going to wet that and get to that in a second. I still got a little bit more time for that, but let's finish the fade and then we'll get into the top. Open. Work my way around the ear. It's at my 45, step 2. Thanks for the review, by the way. Appreciate it. Yeah, you guys can leave reviews on our Google. It's greatly appreciated as students attending the school. Just kind of leave like what your experience has been like thus far. Love it, hate it. Let us know. Please leave a review. We greatly appreciate it. I know nobody, not our students, hate it, so I already know that's not the problem. You get on my nerves. You said you hate it?
No, I said I like it.
Sound like you said I do.
No, I said
We was gonna have a whole nother conversation. You did? Thank you. Thank you so much. So I'm going back up, slowly dropping my angle, working my way down. Close it more. I don't need to worry about this. We already faded that. But I have to marry them together. So the quadrant I'm working in is here. I'm going to go up, put the 1 on, work my way up, remove some of this weight. Flatten it. So here's what happens when you're just cutting flat. I wanted to give you a visual so you can see it. Put your head down like this. Okay, perfect. If I go in flat, you see how it's up under the hair? When you're cutting up under the hair, that's where you create weight and lines. Okay? This guard, not only does the guard have this little round edge, your blade also has that round edge. So as you're cutting in, you can round out. The clipper or the moving blade and the steel blade is not touching his head. It appears like it's touching his head here, but it's actually not. It's resting on that round part of the blade. So as I'm cutting, in order to cut it, tilt your head this way, in order not to cut into the fade as I round out, look how high up I am. But is the blade touching his head? Not at all. So as I'm rounding out, I'm getting away by rocking it off. The method that I use is I'm looking at the shape of the cut. So as I hold it at a 90, I maintain this shape the whole way through. Okay? I'm following the shape. Oops, get y'all to see. Remember I put that little line at the bottom? I'm going to do that right here because it's a tighter space and I want y'all to see what I'm doing. See, it's a tiny little line I'm putting in there on purpose. I'm going to slowly remove it, going 1 notch up. One notch up. One notch up. Close it all the way because I want to marry these two sides. Now we just did this fade without putting any real lines in here. If I would have put a real hard line in, it would be hard to remove. Oh yeah, I got to clean this off. So Charlene's question is, am I going to clean up his neck on this side? Yep. He's going to tilt down. Why do I want him to tilt down? So I can stretch his skin, make it a little bit tighter. He's got a little tiny little line right in here. I see it. You probably don't really see much of it, but I definitely can see it. So I'm going to open this up at a 45. Now I'm going to flatten it a little bit. 1 notch down. There it is. Open it all the way up. Hold it at a 90. Soften it up. And now we're blended. So he has this really, really dark spot in the middle. Y'all see that? So I have to make sure that this looks good. Why is it really dark smack in the middle? Say that again? So the density is coming together from both sides, and his occipital bone is right here. So everything's being pushed here. Younger kids, they don't have as much adipose, fatty tissue, or even muscle tissue here. Because he has enough adipose tissue, and adipose is fatty tissue, and muscle tissue, it's flatter. But you ever see like a little kid, they have this like tiny little neck and they got this big dimple that goes the whole ways down? The way you fix that is posture. Sit all the way back in the chair for me. Like slide your butt back. Okay, perfect. Now poke your chest out like Superman. Okay, now tilt your head down. What I just did is align his spine. It flattens all of this out for me. The dark spot sort of went away. Not completely, but did it get a little bit lighter? Okay. Because he's in this position, now I can go ahead and try and remove as much of this without putting my thumb and pulling up and just leave it where it's at. What's that? If some people want it. Yeah, some people want it. So I don't have that 1.5, right? 1.5's on the floor. So I'm gonna use my 1, just use my corner. Close it. 45. Work my way around, tilt your head this way. Move some of that weight. Now the back looks a whole lot better in that middle area. Close it a little more if I want to get it a little bit more. Now it looks a whole lot better. Okay? So if you're cutting a kid, sit them all the way back, shoulders back, chest out, head down. That would help to remove as much as possible. Most little kids, they don't have the adipose tissue, they don't have the muscle tissue to fill in that space. So it's going to be really, really thin. You'll see this happening, and you'll have a big dimple here. Chest back, butt back, chest out, shoulders back, head down will help to spread all that out and fill in the gap so you can flatten that out. All right? That help? Cool. So now what I'm going to do is, before we even get into his beard, I'm not even worried about his beard. I'm going to go ahead and wet his hair and then take a look. Notice as I'm combing and spraying, I'm spraying away from his face so that the water is not dripping in his face. I see lots of people, they just be blasting this way. That water is going to start falling down and dripping into his face. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to spray away from his face, back this way, and slowly work my comb and that water into his hair. Does that mean that it's not going to? No, it still could, but it's not going to happen as much. So now what I want to look at is transitioning, removing some of that weight that we were talking about earlier, right? And I need to work on the top. One of the things he said in the beginning is he doesn't want what? A lot cut off, any cut off the top. He said, leave the top alone. Well, newsflash, he's getting some cut off the top. He's not getting a lot cut off, but he is going to get some cut off the top. So when I'm looking at this, and this has nothing to do with my haircut, it has everything to do with what he has already previously had. He has a lot of weight right in here. So I have to remove some of this weight so that way it transitions into the weight that I left and created. Do you see the difference? See it in the back there? Okay. So I can do a shear over comb or a clipper over comb technique. It's going to be much quicker for me to do a clipper over comb technique, so I'm going to use that. My guide is going to be at the bottom and the top. But remember, we're maintaining, what's the 3 things we're looking at? Shape, length, and direction. The direction of the hair is going back. You can see that weight right in here. So the length is off right there. You see that? This is the shortest part of the hair. The direction is out here. So if I maintain my direction using the length, I won't cut too much off. Length and direction. This is the length of the hair at the bottom. This is the shape. Go up. I'm maintaining the shape. Much better.
So what's wrong with the direction of the shape of the cut or the direction of the hair?
Length, shape, and direction. Okay? Length is first, right? No, shape is first, then length. This is the style that he wants, so it's the shape of the cut. His cut is this. It's not this. It's this. So I have to maintain this shape first overall. The length is going to be determined by the shape, okay? But the direction that he combs it also affects the length. Because if he's combing the hair this way, I now have more weight. But when I direct the hair the way he's going to comb it, I have less weight, okay? Shape, length, and direction. If I change the direction, changes the length. Okay? This ain't YouTube, trust me. So when I'm combing this up, I'm just following this shape all the way out. That's all I'm doing. I'm not doing anything different. I'm looking at the length based on my guide at the bottom. I'm finding my shape. Once I find my shape, I work my way, continue to follow that shape the whole ways up. Okay? If you watch me on the monitor, I will not go outside of the shape or inside of it. So I'm gonna just do it without looking. I'm gonna just do what I would naturally do. Did I follow that imaginary line the whole ways up? Because I'm maintaining the shape of the cut. There's no hair, so the length don't matter up here. Okay? Work my way down here. See, is that much smoother right there? But I have this weight right here. The shape, the length, shape. Is the weight gone? Shape. The weight is now gone. You're talking about that little bit of weight right there, right?
No, I think I'm talking about
Like where the fade is, right in here.
a little bit of heat.
Yeah, I'll get to that. I'll get to that. When you're talking about a drop fade though, a lot of times they're wearing that weight. So a lot of people who want to perfect a longer transition, or they want to have that like a longer gradient, this is a much shorter transition. So you're going to go into some kind of weight. If I want to remove some of that, it's up to him. I'll ask him in a second. Do the same thing. Comb this back. Length, shape. Length, shape. Because his head's rounding out, I'm not going up. I'm still bringing this out to the shape of the cut. See how far away I am from his head? Let me do it like that. As I'm lifting this up, look how far away I am from his head. I'm not up on it and I'm not doing this. If I do this, I'm gonna put a pothole because this is shorter than this. So as long as I maintain my shape, I don't cut into the haircut. Now we have a lot of that weight removed. Still got a little bit right here. So I did change the angle of my comb. Let me show you from here what I did and why. Although the angle, so his hair is going this way. So I want to cut the hair, so I'm going against the grain. So I'm pulling the hair out, okay? But what I'm doing is I'm still maintaining the shape. Although my angle changed, the shape didn't change, okay? I'm just trying to catch that hair so that way I don't have that weight. And there it goes. I removed it. Okay? So earlier you were asking about this area. This is what he has. That's his hair string breaking up right there. Okay? Because after I wet it, it would either fall, but as I comb it, it's still there. It's very prominent. That's his. A little bit of product will help to reposition that. So now that I had that in place, Ando, here's what he's talking about. You see how you have this tiny little bit of weight in here?
Yeah.
It's not a line, but your transition from skin to this long hair, there's going to be sort of a ridge. Do you want me to soften that up just a little bit?
Yeah.
Or is that fine?
Yeah, you can soften.
Soften it up, okay. So I'm going to go to my 2. Better?
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't have the ridge. I still got some dark spots. Those dark spots are dimples in his head. He's got a dimple right here, and he's got a dimple right here. So how I fix them is I had to go inside of that. That's where you'll see guys, and you'll see them doing this, but you don't understand why they're doing this. Yeah, they're going in to that dark spot just to lighten it a little bit. That's all that is. I'm going to use this tool, put my 1 on there, hold it at 90, dig into that light spot, or that dark spot rather, and help blend that in a little bit more. Some stuff you're not going to totally eliminate, especially with a drop fade if someone doesn't have a very flat head, because the darker the hair, the lighter the skin, you're going to get some of those imperfections. Doesn't mean that you didn't do a good job. Because I'm looking at this, it's faded. The shape of it is good. It's just the dimples that are creating shadows. But when you look at that, it's in there, right? So now I'm going to go ahead and put that 2 back on. Look down. Right at that ridge, popping this weight off. Much better. Now I'm going to go in, I'm going to trim some of this hair. I'm going to use the black comb, but I'm also using my fingers. So what I'm going to do here, my fingers becomes the contrast. If I do this, you can't really see the contrast because the comb is black. So my fingers become the contrast. Remember our umbrella? So the apex, let me turn the camera this way so that everybody can see. The apex is the highest point. From here down is where the flat area becomes rounded right in here. From here to here it becomes round. Do you see that? So this is the area where I'm going to be over directing a little bit because direction is part of what we're focused on a haircut. So from here, there's an imaginary line going down. This is where my section is. I'm grabbing this hair. Do you see that peak right there? So I have a guide, and I have a guide at the top, and then that little peak is creating weight. Same thing. Next section, I have a guide at the bottom, I have a guide at the top. That's creating weight. Vertical cutting removes weight. But I'm not pulling it straight out, I'm over directing it backwards. Guide, guide. You see it? I'm just cutting off the peak. Now this is coming straight out at a 90. See my peak? That's where some of my weight is taking place. He said don't trim any on the top. That's part of the problem. Let me do it like this so you guys can see what's happening. Okay, I'm at the center of the head. What I don't want to do is keep going around this way because I just combed all this back. So I'm going to start over here on this side, same area from the apex down. And what I'm going to be doing, let me pull it like this. So from here down, I'm coming back. I'm looking for those same peaks. See it? I'm working my way backwards. See the peak? See the peak? Working my way backwards. Peak. Working my way backwards to the middle. Peak. 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 Now I'm back in the middle. We should have a much better transition happening from here to here, all this area. Now I got to transition my crown into my top. So I'm going to start in the middle and I'm going to work my way out from the apex down and then I'm going to go from the right side to the left side. So let's start at the apex. I'm going to lift this up. I want to maintain as much height as possible here, but I need to transition this cut to here. Do you see where my length is over here? See all this weight right in here? I need to keep the length here. So I'm going to remove this, and what I'm maintaining is this shape the whole ways down. Okay? So what I'm doing with my fingers is I'm stabilizing it with my pinky on this side. This side is keeping me stable, and I'm going to maintain this shape the whole ways through. So watch what I do. I'm holding on to the hair. I'm grabbing my next section of hair, and all I'm doing is coming straight back down, maintaining this shape as I go down. Did you see that? Right here at the crown, here's what you can see. I have my length at the bottom. I have my length at the top. That needs to be trimmed. Okay? Now that I have my guide at the center, I can go right beside that, lift this up, and clean this up. Maintaining my shape. It's not a lot. It's just a little bit that needs trimmed. Go back to the opposite side of that same guide. There's a lot needs cut on this side. There it is. I'm looking at my guide on this side. Work my way down. Guide, guide, trim. Guide, guide. My lowest part here, my lowest part here. All that in between gets cut. Guide, guide. Cut. Work my way across. Guide, guide. Cut. Guide at the bottom. You see it? Guide at the top. That's getting trimmed. Does it look like I cut a lot off the top? Not at all. So although he hears a lot of snips, I have a much better transition from the top, from here going into the back. Do you see that much better? Remember it was like really lifted, we had a flat spot? Did I soften that flat spot up? I did. I'm not going to trim any off of the top though. But now is the top smoother going into the rest of this hair than it was earlier? And we completely removed that big bump he had right here. Do y'all see that? Did I do anything difficult? No, I didn't. I did the same stuff that you guys have been working on. All I did was put the pieces of the puzzle together. All right. Now, I know you guys aren't allowed to use thinning shears right now, but what we just did was a lot of exterior cutting. So exterior cutting is the shape of the cut. The three things we focus on was shape, length, and direction. We got all that down. We got our haircut, it's pretty much completed. We got the shape of the cut, we got the length of the cut, and we got the direction that we want the hair to lay. But a lot of this hair, we want it to stand up. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna get away from his bangs, go about 2 finger lengths from his hairline. Okay, so about 2 finger lengths from his hairline. And I'm gonna go right in here, I'm gonna lift this hair up, and I'm gonna go ahead and do some notch cutting with my thinning shears. I'll remove that out the way. There's the hair that I cut. I'm gonna go back, notching it. I'm gonna explain what I'm doing in a second. And I'm removing a little bit of that weight. What that hair, the hair that I just cut in those 2 sections, is gonna help this hair to stand up a lot higher once you begin to style it, okay? If I'm cutting inside, I'm removing, wait, let me do it. If I'm cutting inside the hair, I'm removing bulk. If I'm cutting on the outside of the hair, I'm adding texture to the ends with this tool. This is your thinning shear. If I'm cutting on the inside, I'm removing weight and bulk. If I'm cutting on the outside, I'm adding texture to the ends. The weight and bulk on the inside is going to help the little hairs to hold the big hairs up. So on the top, I did that right up front. This I don't really need to because I want this to be heavy, okay? On the sides, what I'm going to do to soften up some of that ridge is I'm going to give some texture right at the very ends of that hair. I'm only working on the ends, just the ends. I've already cut, I've already faded it. I'm only working on the ends to help eliminate some of that weight in there. Now, the reason that you shouldn't be using thinning shears on a full haircut is because the more you use your thinning shears or your texturizing shears on the haircut, you're gonna have a whole bunch of uneven hair in the interior of the haircut. As his hair grows out, it's going to continue to be uneven, and then it becomes very fuzzy and very difficult to cut. And you don't know, why is his hair not laying right? Because you went to town with your thinning shears and the haircut looked good this week, and you did it again 2-3 weeks later and it looked pretty good. But as the hair begins to grow out, it gets so fuzzy because you have a whole bunch of uneven hair and you can't fix the cut and you don't understand why. You want to know what he's doing wrong. And it ain't him. Is that you did an improper cut on it. I rarely use my texturizing shears. Even what I did in the front, I can do that with my shears as well. He still has a lot of hair here. I would like to go a little shorter in here, but I'm not going to because I don't want to freak him out. So what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna get a little bit of product here. This is a molding cream, and we should be done in about 5 minutes. Get this out. I put about a dime size of product in my hand. I'm going to emulsify this in my hand, meaning I'm just rubbing it in so I can spread it. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to shoe shine it. All I'm doing is putting it on the tips of the hair. Look at how the texture of the hair is already changing. Did you see that? Did I smash his head? All I'm doing is shoe shining. I'm just putting it on the edges. Okay? Did you see the texture of his hair automatically change visually on that screen? Okay, it was sticking together. Now it was separated, now it's sticking together. I'm gonna emulsify it some more. And remember, the style is direction, right? So I'm gonna, from the parietals, I'm gonna begin to start pulling this back. And now I can be a little bit more aggressive on where I'm putting the product. I'm gonna use my fingertips and get it into his scalp, right? So I can push this down. I'm gonna take some of this and I wanna get right underneath this so I can bring this forward. Anyone can tell me why I want this forward? Long, why else? Why do I want this to come forward? So it can go higher. Yep. So it can go higher. Now I'm aggressively putting the product and manipulating it through the hair. But now I want this hair to do what I want it to do. Is the hair bouncing back like it was earlier? No, it's going in the direction that I want it to go. So now I can begin to blow dry this haircut and put it in place. See, 1, 2, here we go. Let's move this to the side real quick. Whoa. Okay. I get that. You can probably unplug that. Now, we want this to look higher up top. So I'm going to blow this to the side first and back. This right here is going to go up and back because this is the direction of the cut. Notice that my airflow is moving in the same direction that I'm drying the hair and I want it to lay. What I'm not doing is blowing it this way and combing it back. I'm always positioning the hair and the flow in the direction that I want the hair to lay. So my brush is going this direction, and so too is my air. Okay? Let's get to this side. When you're building a house, where do you start the house? This is my foundation. Now, because I want this to be flatter, I need to push this down. So let me get a top view, please. So notice that I've worked from the apex and around the sides. All of this I haven't worked on. So now I'm gonna go back in here. You can, this is me, hold up. I got it. What up? So at the crown, I'm gonna work this down to flatten this a little bit more. Do you see how I flattened that out? No, let me get the side view. Do you see how that's much flatter? It was lifted up higher. Is the hair doing what it wants to do or what I want it to do? What I want it to do. Because the foundation of a good hairstyle is a what? I said it earlier. The foundation of a good hairstyle is the hair, the cut. So right at the apex and this crown, I'm working this down. I want this to be flat. I'm lifting this up here from the sides and the parietal. I'm bringing this up. Same thing I did on this side. Now that I'm past the apex, what I want to do is I want to blow dry this forward because I want maximum volume. So here's my point of separation. Let me get top view. My point of separation is right here at the apex. This hair is going down and flat as much as I possibly can, right? This hair from the parietal into the back is lifting up. You see that height right there? Right in here? This right here, I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna lift the height up here. Do you see my height in here? So right here at the apex is a point of transition from the front to the back. What I'm gonna begin to do now is I'm gonna grab, I'm gonna twist, which is gonna create tension, and then I'm gonna roll it backwards. So let's grab the hair. If I just grab the hair and lift it up, am I getting any hair? I'm not getting any hair. But if I grab and I twist, do I have hair? Okay, this creates tension. So I'm gonna grab, give it a little shimmy, twist the hair, and now I wanna roll this hair back. And now I have maximum lift. Let me get a side profile. Now I have maximum lift. I'm going to grab, shimmy, tension, roll it back. Shimmy, tension, roll it back. I'm applying my heat right to the brush so that way I can get maximum heat on that hair, because putting that heat affects which bonds? The hydrogen bonds. A little shimmy, little shimmy, little shimmy, little shimmy. Working my way up, shimmy, shimmy, twist and turn. Twist, look at that, ain't going nowhere. Twist and turn. Twist and turn. Maximum lift. Now, I got as high as I can possibly make it, and I got this as flat as I can possibly get it right now. You guys see that pump that he's looking for? But there's a disconnect right here. Do you see it? All right. This is when you add just a little bit more product, your finishing product. Yep. And now, because I've affected the H bonds of the hair, this wants to go forward, this wants to go flat. I could be a little bit more aggressive. I could use my fingers to push this through, and I can create my transition. So now there's no disconnect. Okay? No disconnect. He's got his pomp happening. Now the last thing that I would do before I even shape him up and everything, I'm going to go and put a little bit of a hairspray. The hairspray is going to help to hold this shape in the front in place. Here we go. So side view. So look how far away I'm spraying it. I'm not up blasting it and hitting it with a lot of heavy product. Product placement is important. Product usage is important. Don't be cheap and afraid to use your products because you want to save some money. I use my products. Now that I got a little bit of that in place, if I have another comb here. When I'm doing the top, I'm lightly touching the top and maintaining my shape. No more disconnect. And we have more of a pomp look happening. Now I'm sure he wants more length on the top. He wants it to grow a little bit longer. But working with what he had, as short as it was, I got maximum lift to give him his pomp look, and we got a good transition happening to the sides and the back. If I wanted to, I can add a little bit more product in here, and I can use my fingers or my comb to smoothen out this top here. So I would take my product and take my comb and flatten that out. And I take my hands, lay that down. Some people don't want hard product in their hair. Unfortunately for him, he's going to have hard product in his hair today because he wanted a pompadour and he doesn't have a lot of hair. But he's got a pomp with a little bit of hair. I'm going to go ahead and shape him up, and then we're going to finish this haircut. Does anybody have any questions so far about what we did? Anything? Anybody? Yes? Say that again. When I said, so the question is, when I faded them on the side with the guidelines, did I set the guidelines with?
Using it closed or open?
I used it closed, and the question is, why did I use it closed? So the reason that I did it closed has a lot to do with the amount of density and the color of his hair and skin. He has a lot of hair, so it's high density. He has really, really dark hair, and he has really, really fair skin. So in order for me to see that line, because he has a lot of density, I can go a little bit closer. So I did it, in this case, closed. If the hair was very fine, or he didn't have as much density, then I probably would have done it open, so that way it wouldn't cut as much off. Excellent question. Anybody else? No? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and line this up. I'm going to line the front up. Is that okay? Because you got these little fuzzies. Okay. Now, when I'm lining him up, what I want you to pay attention to is, remember I talked about stabilizing with the liner? I'm placing my fingertip. I'm seeing the line here. This is what I'm looking at. Okay? You see how I'm using my comb as a guide? My POV is my eyes are coming from here down to where I want that line to be. So as my fingertip might be here, I'm rocking this down to that line. Okay? That's what I'm looking at. So that comb is going to help you to determine as a visual for you, because my eyes aren't here. I'm here. My liner's down here. But as I'm looking from my eyesight, I'm looking to where his line is. So this is from his hairline to my eyes, that's the angle. But my clipper is here. So I want to make sure that I don't want to be too high, because then I'm going to cut into his hairline. So I'm going to be lower than it, and as I rock down, I'm going to where my eyes are seeing that line. Does that make sense? Does that help you? Same thing. So here's another thing that I want to show you about the line. The chair is facing this way. If he was looking straight, that's where he would be. I'm standing here. In order for me to look straight down, I have to pivot his head so it's looking at me, so I can determine where I need to cut. I don't want to cut into his hairline. I can step back to get a visual of it and go ahead and hit his line. Notice what I didn't do was this. The reason I didn't go do this is what? Ergonomics. It's going to hurt. I'm going to get tired. I'm not going to be cutting for a long time. Me leaning over here, but for him, no, his head's on a swivel. I'm right here. This is where I need your head to be. Do you line this up?
You can. Yeah.
Okay. So, for that, what I want you to see is, this is where his line is. Is my comb going forward or straight down? It's going forward. This is perpendicular with the ground. Okay? What a lot of people do is they try to go in and make it straight up and down with the ground. If I go straight up and down with the ground, am I cutting into his hairline? Okay. Look at all of that hair that I don't want to remove. So I want to follow his natural line using that forward lean. And the reason why I'm using the forward lean, one, it's his natural hairline. The other thing is his forehead is rounded. It's not flat. It's not a flat surface. So I have to make this flat surface look squared. If I create this line going straight down, I cut off this entire peak, and now his hairline is taken back, and when he looks at it, it's going to look like it's going this way. So you guys are all seeing that I'm using a forward lean for this line, right? Am I making this up, or you guys see it? Okay, we're going to do the same thing on this side. Forward lean. Am I doing a forward lean? Okay. It wasn't perpendicular with the ground, was it? I was just following his line. Did you see it? Okay. Now that you've seen that I was going forward, when you look at it, his round space is now squared. Now it looks squared. It looks straight, up and down. I'm talking about this part. His hairline slightly is already crooked. I would have to cut into this side if I want to bring it up, but I'm leaving it natural unless he wants me to do anything different. What we're focusing on right now is the point of recession to here and here. You saw I was cutting it forward, but when you look at it straight on, does it look squared?
Almost if he tilt his head down, it would look like he went.
So let's do that. Tilt your head down a little bit. Does it look squared? Okay? But we all saw that it's cut forward. So if you're struggling with trying to create this shape, a little tip for you. If you're prone to go up and down, tilt your head down. Now I can go up and down. His head is tilted down. I can go up and down. When he leans back, it's forward. Okay? All righty. So I want to finish this because we still got like about 5 minutes before you guys are out of here cleaning up. His beard, trim this, blend that in a little bit. There's that. I go from open to close. So right now I'm open, a little bit more, right at the top, start to close it. Open up more, just to go lower. Close it.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Close it all the way.
As you're going down. So like towards the more denser area, it would be going from like the C start, going down to like the jawline, it would be from close to open.
Oh yeah, but you asked me how I cut it.
Yeah, that
Okay, so the transition you're talking about is close to open.
yeah.
The way I cut it is open to close. Okay, but yes, I'm transitioning from closed to open. So up top is open as I work my way down, then I close it and I work my way down. I'm just going to use my corner because it's a little dark right there. It's a little dark right there. And then this side, the density is different than the other side, so I'm going to use my liner right at the bottom. Bottom of the fade, top of the beard. Just for that transition. There it is. Okay? Let's do this. Okay. Put your head back. You guys can see. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a round shape. I'm going to take a flat tool and make it round. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to take this round shape and I'm going to make it flat. So I'm going to where it dips the most, and I'm going to pull this straight up, and I'm going to make this area straight. My Cosmo crossovers. I'm making this area straight. You see how that line is straight? Straight. Right at that turn, I'm making it straight. Now I have a straight line because I have a straight tool. As I pull that out, now I just made something that's straight, rounded. I'll go and get rid of this excess hair. I could do the same thing on the opposite side. I'll do it for you this way so you guys can see. Turn this way. I'm gonna use my backhand movement for this. I'm gonna make this round area. You know what? Let me get a top view. There we go. Turn this way for me. So I'm going to take this area that's rounded, I'm going to pull it straight out, I'm going to go right up to the line, and I'm going to make that straight. Make this straight, make this straight, pull this hair, make it straight. Now it's rounded. Go in, freehand, just clean up all this little excess. I cut people all the time. I cut somebody last week. I've been cutting for over 28 years. Cut them, like make them bleed. I've been cutting for 28 years and I cut somebody last week. It's you have a sharp tool, you have pliable skin. It can happen. All right. All right, guys, you guys can go ahead and clean up. You don't have any more questions. Thank you so much. I'm going to finish his mustache. We'll do another demo next week. Yo, E. Eric, can you stop the recording on the thing? It's like recording right now. Go ahead. What's your question?
No, I was just,
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to continue to watch.
You said you got another demo?
Yeah, I'm going to be kind of, I said, I mean, you can stay and watch if you want to, but
So you want the chairs to stay the same?
you can leave the chairs right where they are. That's fine.
No, I'm just saying, they ain't gonna do it. It is. He the only person who owns that shoes on that.
This way.
He'll be there. You got the this one. Oh. I didn't know that was a
How was that for you, Hondo? No, Eric took care of it. The guy who came in? Thank you, though.
I took some into from like when you were talking, like
Of course, because you're feeling it and you're listening to it.
This is some kind of having a better understanding of it.
Mm-hmm.